I'm going to show you how to draw this Christmas still life using colored pencils. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Back in October, I did a Halloween demonstration that I offered line art for you guys so you could draw or paint it yourself. And I had some requests to do the same thing for Christmas with colored pencil. So this drawing, the reference photo, and the line drawing is available over on my website if you want to draw it yourself. If you post your project to social media, please tag me in it so I can see what you've completed. All of the supplies that I used for this piece are listed below in the video description along with the colors used. Now if you do not have the same colored pencils that I use or you don't have the same colors, don't worry about it. All that really matters is that you're paying attention to your values, that your lights are light enough and your darks are dark enough. Now for this piece I wanted to keep it super simple so that beginners or advanced can complete this. I did not put tons of detail in mine. You can put way more detail if you want to. That's why I'm providing the actual reference photo this time so that if you do want to put more detail, it is available to you. But if you're a beginner and you just want to get started and keep it fairly simple, you can copy what I've done here. If you are supporters over on Patreon, the 2-hour version of this tutorial is available for you guys now, so make sure to head over and check that out. Now, onto this tutorial. Starting out on this one, I'm working right over the Fabriano writing on the paper because I know I'm not going to sell this, and if I want to make prints, I can just Photoshop that section out. But starting off, I'm working on my background, and I'm working with a very light hand. I'm not pushing hard. I'm using 2 or 3 different shades of this turquoise blue color. I'm starting with the light section and then I'm adding shadows for some of the creases in that curtain. Now once I get this first go through finished or filled in that background, I'm going to come back through and start hyping up my shadows and my contrast a bit more. You can see I'm using a much darker pencil now and darkening all of this up. Notice that I'm layering over both the light and the dark portions. That way when I blend out, it has a very out of focus. I don't want too much detail, and I just get this soft transition from my lights to my darks. I'm still using a very light hand. I don't want to push hard here. If I do, I can damage the tooth of the paper, which will prevent it from taking very many layers. And I want a lot of layers on this. So now I'm using Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner to blend this out. Gamsol works exactly the same if you can find that. I'm using a Filbert Taklon bristled brush. I let that dry, and it's important that you let it dry completely in between blending with paint thinner. If you don't, you can damage the paper if you try to work a pencil over that wet paper. It should only take a few seconds to a few minutes to dry depending on how much paint thinner that you used. So several more layers, darkening this up. Blending that out again with paint thinner, and you'll notice that I switched to a smaller brush for the little areas. You don't have to use the same brush for everything. Adding more layers of these darker turquoise colors. Still using a very light hand. I'm using that Derwent Drawing Chinese White to pull out a few highlights. And blending that again with paint thinner on these later layers of paint thinner. I'm not using quite as much paint thinner on the brush, and that's important. If you use too much on your last layers, you can actually lift some of that pigment off the paper, which is definitely not what you want. So moving on to the Christmas ornament, this is one where you can choose to put way more detail or keep it a bit more simple as I've done here. And it's reflecting at the table under it, so you can see that I've got the wood grain in there, but the wood grain is not straight. It's not a flat mirror. So I've got to make sure that those lines are curved to follow the shape of that actual ornament. And this ornament is silver, but look at all of the colors that it picks up around it. I'm missing a chunk there for the blue ornament, but I've done the same thing. I've started off with a light color for the base, and then I've come around the edges darkening that up to give it some shape. And it's really important that these don't come out flat one color. If I just chose this perfect beautiful color of blue and colored the entire ornament that color, then it's going to look very flat. Pay close attention to where those shadows and highlights are. On the wood grain, I can be very loose and very sketchy because those lines, as long as I keep them horizontal, just look like wood grain. For these letters, this is a stamped metal, partially painted, has some glitter on it type of ornament or decoration. And so I've got a lot of dots in here. There's a lot of texture there, and mostly they're just little dots. It's very simple. You can go more exact to be more careful than I was here, but the little dots still give you that look of that glittery textured metal that I wanted. So I'm starting here, I want to block in the rest of my background or the wood grain of the table so that it's easier for me to judge my values. I started having trouble when I was working on the silver bow for the bells. It was really hard for me to tell how light or dark everything needed to be because I was up against that white paper. So I'm going to go ahead and darken all this up now. And I'm not finishing it. I'll come back later and work on my contrast and details and everything like that. But by blocking in part of it, it makes it way easier for me to judge the values that I need on this ribbon. You can see I'm using varying shades of grays, a little bit of blue, but mostly warm and cool grays with some white for that ribbon. Onto the rest of the end there. We've got a lot of texture. Now onto the bells. I'm starting using my black Polychromos by drawing in the lines or the cuts in the bell itself. Then I'm going to come through and put in all of the browns and grays and blue colors. These bells are completely silver, but they're so reflective. They're picking up all of the colors around them. So here I've got a lot of browns because of them sitting on this wood table. Notice on the bell that has that glittery textured look, I mostly just did that by dots. This is where you're going to practice your pointillism. And I'm working one bell at a time. If I try to do all of the bells, it's going to get too overwhelming. So just like if you're doing animals and you're filling in the feathers, or even if you're doing florals, look at all of this as abstract shapes and break it down to one small area at a time. Don't try to do them all at the same time, or like I said, it will get very overwhelming. I'm using all of the colors that I used in the background are what I'm using on these bells. Now you'll start to see me using my white luminance to pull highlights back out in here. What I'm doing there is just lightening things up. If I needed something to stay perfectly white on a colored pencil piece, I need to let the white of the paper show through. By adding the white luminance, I'm able to lighten it, but not bring it back completely to white. So here I'm darkening up now the wood grain of that table. Better defining that and blending it out with paint thinner. Now while that dries, I'm moving on to the O. And that is the same thing I did on the N, just filling out, copying the texture in the reference photo. Lots of little dots to make it look a little bit more glittery. Now, again, I am not copying mine exactly. You absolutely can if you want to. I kept mine a bit more simple. But I still have that texture. Now, one huge tip I have for you is to keep your edges clean. Make sure when you're doing something like this, when you've got this still life, that the objects that are up close to you are kept very, very clean on those edges. So I've got to come back through later on, and you won't see this in the video, but I'm going to come back through with the colors in the curtains and clean up the edges of those letters so that they're very sharp. Now onto the pine cones. I'm starting by using my black Polychromos and filling in all of the dark areas. I'm pushing really hard on the darkest areas, so I am burnishing there, and on the areas that are dark but not pitch black, I'm using a lighter hand. But I'm doing this all with this pencil, and it makes it go so easy. This was one of the easiest things in this piece to complete. Once I get the black in there, I'm going to take various shades of browns and gold colors to go right over everything. I'm keeping it easy, going right over the black and the browns, adding a little bit of that magenta color, blending that out with paint thinner. Now here, they look like pine cones. You would think, oh, I can just leave them there, but don't. Keep working on it. I'm going to hype up some of the darks in there with that black Polychromos, and I'm also going to use my white luminance to pull out a lot of highlights and details in there. Look what a difference that pine cone I'm working on right now makes compared to the first one. If you keep working on it, keep layering up those details and building up, you can make it look so much more realistic. Just going to go around and hype up my contrast a bit more. Now, the section that I'm doing here, I added a bit of a glitter type texture. It's just shaved white colored pencil. I have a video showing you how to do that. I will have a link pop up here. So check that out if you want to see how I got that glittery textured look with the white. If you want to draw this one yourself, I have the line drawing available for you over at my website, Lachri.com. That link will be below in the video description. I've also made an adult coloring page out of this piece, so if you know someone who likes to color, you may want to link that to them. Thanks for watching. Again, if you are supporters over on Patreon, the 2-hour version of this tutorial is available for you now, complete with voiceover. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, social media tips for artists each Thursday, and artist vlogs every weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google+, all of those social media sites. I've got to stop saying Tumblr because I really don't ever post there. They're listed below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. What is my hair doing? You know what? We are going to have words after this video. Next week, I'm going to be showing you guys how to do really simple acrylic Christmas gifts and also providing a line drawing that you can use yourself. So if you have some last-minute gifts to get done, I am going to help you out.